Hey guys, it's Kevin again. So, as you guys know, I have recently started up doing episodic reviews of TV shows again, and one of the ones that I was very much set on reviewing was American Horror Story Apocalypse. But of course, the issue is that there's already been 5 episodes of that show that has already aired. So, in order for me to move forward, I decided that I would review the first 5 episodes of American Horror Story Apocalypse, give you my general thoughts on everything, what I like, what I dislike, all that stuff. So let's just jump into it right now. Now, of course, the plot for this season, I don't think I really need to say too much. You know, there's this apocalypse that happens. It affects the entire world. A bunch of these people, they're the only people that are left that haven't either died or been infected by the radiation. And they are put into this bunker where basically they have to acclimate and survive. But that's not what we know this season as. We, of course, know this season as the big Murder House Coven crossover. And because of that, I don't think there has been this big of a hype for an American Horror Story season in quite some time, considering how adored those 2 seasons are. I think those are 2 of the most well-received seasons in American Horror Story history. Obviously, Asylum is probably objectively the best for most people. But in terms of the seasons that people really wanted to see crossover, those are the 2 I've heard the most about. So I myself was also very hyped for it. I love Murder House. I love Coven. Coven was actually the first American Horror Story season I ever saw. Not just the first one I reviewed on this channel, which I do not recommend watching those videos. Let me just say, those are not good at all. But it always is going to have a special place in my heart. So needless to say, my anticipation for the season was kind of through the roof. That being said, I was also a little bit worried considering that, because of the fact that it was going to be a crossover of these 2 seasons and have its own storyline, I was worried the season was going to be a bit of a clusterfuck and maybe it wasn't going to be as rewarding of an experience as we think it is. And as for the first 5 episodes, what do I think of them so far? It's good. I will say that. This is a good season so far, but I do think that there is still a lot of things that I'm hoping that they do address and work on a little bit with these last 5 episodes, because there are some things here that just aren't really working for me, but I'm just going to get into it right now. So let's just talk about the initial introduction of the show, which I personally loved. The opening sequence especially, I thought was phenomenal with the whole plane crashing and, seeing the, 1 second it's just a normal day in LA, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, we're under attack, it's World War III, and, basically the entire world is going, this is basically the end of the world, and you're seeing people have to leave behind their loved ones. Everyone's like, people are literally running into cars and falling on cars because they don't want to have to be destroyed. They don't want to have to be victims of the bombing and things like that. I mean, it is a spectacular sequence, and it's probably one of the best sequences we've ever seen on this show. I really love this opening 5 minutes a lot. It perfectly gets you into the mood of this season, and that's something that I really did love about it. It's just right from the beginning, the show is already operating on full speed. It gives you that adrenaline rush in a way that American Horror Story often doesn't, and that's something that I really did love about it. I really love this introduction. I especially love the shot where we see Coco and we pan away from her, and we can see, her eyelid. We can see that one, building, we can see that, the one, building blowing up behind her, and, she sees the destruction of all of LA. I mean, it's a harrowing scene, and yes, I did hear they did kind of rip that off from another movie, but I still thought it was a really great sequence, and I thought it really did pay off in that way. That being said, moving forward from there, it's kind of difficult to review these first 3 episodes because there's not a lot that happens here. It's very much just, here are the characters, we're going to place them in this setting, and they don't really do a lot with them. I will admit there were some things here that I was very intrigued by. I do like the idea that there are all these random people. Some of them are grays, and then the others are purples. They were all purple, and they get to, the people who are purple, they get to flourish, and they get to live in this bunker, which admittedly really isn't all that great. I mean, not only are they in this really awful, period piece type clothing, which we really don't understand at all. The whole thing is like this Victorian setting. But they are basically forced with one meal a day, which is this very tiny cube. It's not canned food or anything like that. It's this very tiny cube and things like that. And they can't, engage in any, copulation or anything like that. So they are very much in a very tough situation here. But I really love concepts like that. There's a lot you can do with it. And does the show do a lot? Not really. Some of them they do, and some of them they don't. And there were some characters here that I really enjoyed a lot. I immediately took a liking to the character of Wilhelmina Venable. I thought Paulson, as usual, did a really great job here, but I really was fascinated by her character, why she was so, why she was so enforcing with her rules and things like that, why she didn't really seem to have much, she had kind of a disregard for most of the people that were residing in this in the outpost. I thought definitely she was a very fascinating character, and especially once we got to her little deformity with her back and what happened there, then I was very intrigued by that. And I think Paulson, she did a very good job at playing this character, someone who clearly does rule with an iron fist, but we can tell there definitely is something vulnerable about her, especially once Michael comes to the picture, which Michael, of course, that's the character I'm sure we were all the most interested in seeing. We've always, since we saw that baby at the end of Murder House, we've always wanted to see what they were going to do with Michael, and I'll come back to him in a little bit, but I did really like the back and forth between Venable and, Michael. I thought the way that she was kind of powerless once Michael comes into the picture, I thought was really interesting, and I really loved, what they did there. And also Mead. I thought Mead was also a very interesting character. It's great to see Kathy Bates return to the show. It's been a little while since she's had, like, a really big role here, but she has honestly been killing it this season. I think more than anyone. I think she definitely has been the MVP this season. I love the work that she's been doing, and Mead, for me, is just a very fascinating character. You can tell that she likes working with Venable. However, once again, when Michael comes in the picture, she's pretty much always under his control, and that's, of course, because we eventually find out that she is a robot that he built. We still don't know a ton about that, but I really have loved what they did with her, and I thought they definitely were the most fascinating characters for sure. And going back to Michael, let's talk about him. I really like the character of Michael Langdon. I think he is a very evil character. Probably one of the most evil characters we've ever seen on the show. He's so despicable. He's so controlling. He's very powerful. Pretty much everything seems to be going his way, and I think he did a very good job with that. The problem is he is sorely miscasted here. Cody Fern, look, as much as he does look like Tate, which let me just say, it is spot on, especially when it comes to the last 3 episodes that we've had. It has been, like, the last 2 or so episodes, it has honestly been uncanny. Like, you could look at Evan Peters as Tate and then look at Michael. They look exactly the same. And I'm not looking forward to when those two interact because it's going to be very hard to tell them apart. So, yes, he does have the look down. Acting-wise, though, I don't really think he's there. He hasn't really been selling it for me. He hasn't really intimidated me all that much. And again, Michael is a really great character. I love where they're going with him as a character. It's just Fern has not really been selling it for me. I think they could have gotten a better actor here. Maybe Finn Wittrock would have been a much better choice. And look, I understand the look is definitely important. You want him to look like Tate, especially after all these years. But it seemed like that's all that Murphy saw. Murphy saw that he looks like Evan Peters, and he cast him in this role, and he didn't really care about his acting ability, which for me just isn't really there. And again, there's a lot of things I like about the character of Michael. I think he's very interesting, especially in the last 2 episodes. I've really been enjoying what we've gotten out of him. But I just think they could have done, they could have gotten a better actor here. And Fern, maybe he'll get better in the last half of the season, but he has just not been doing it for me just yet. Everyone else here was kind of 50-50 for me. I did like the relation between Mr. Gallant and his grandmother, played by Joan Collins. I did like the overall relationship that these two had. I thought it was definitely very interesting. It's interesting to see Evan Peters play a gay character. I don't think we've seen that before in any of these seasons, so that was kind of cool to see. And he does a really good job with it. I did like the character of Gallant, how he is someone who you can tell that he kind of resents his grandmother, but at the same time, he can't really get away from her because she's always been in the picture, and she's very critical of his relationships, and I really did like what we got out of that character. Then there would be characters like Coco, who I really was not a fan of. I thought she was extremely annoying in the first episode of this show, just constantly complaining. She's just the, basically, she's just the daddy's girl of, like, this guy who's, like, a very powerful, like, millionaire or billionaire or something like that, and I just really was not a fan of her. I like Leslie Grossman as an actress, but I was not feeling this character. I have grown to warm up to her, but it did take me a while. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was not a huge fan of her. And I really did not know how to feel about her. Then you have characters like Adina Porter and her son, who we don't know much about. Still, in episode 5, we don't really know a lot about them. We know that she was, in fact, a TV host before all this, and we know that she has this sort of contentious relationship with her son that, is obviously kind of messy, but other than that, we don't really know a lot about these two, about, the character of Dinah, and I'm hoping in the next 5 episodes we get to know her a little bit more, because there's still not a lot that is known there. I really love Adina Porter as an actress. I'm glad to see she finally has a big role in this show. I mean, she did in Roanoke, but at least this season they're crediting her as a main character as opposed to Roanoke, when literally the main character wasn't even in the main cast list. It was very strange overall. But I did like what we got there from her. Then there's Timmy and Emily, which I know a lot of people have said a lot about these characters, and I will say no, they're not great. They're really not, but I saw a lot of potential in them. I like Kyle Allen. I like Ash Santos. I think the two work very well together. The introduction to Timmy, I really loved a lot. The fact that he was someone who got into college, and you could see that he was very happy about it, but unfortunately, that's upended by the announcing of this apocalypse, and he very swiftly has to say goodbye to his family. He's taken away because he was the chosen one, and same with Emily, and we still don't know what that was really about, but I did like the way we kind of focused on them a little bit, and how these two were kind of the normal ones in a house full of crazies, and, I really love them getting more into the conspiracy of what's really going on, and I think they did do a good job. It's just a shame because they never really did much of anything with these characters, and we'll get to them a little bit later on, because again, I want more from these two, but I'm fearing that we're really not going to get more from these two, mainly because of what does end up happening in the 3rd episode of this season. I don't really think we're going to get a lot from them, but of what we saw, I didn't dislike them by any means, but I just wanted a lot more there, and I think that what they should have done for these first 3 episodes is put the focus more on these two. They, by far, I think, had the most potential out of all the characters. Timmy would have been a very good anchor for this show. Maybe they could have focused more on him having to say goodbye to his family and kind of the loss of that. Maybe there was something he really wanted from going to college, and they could have focused on that a little bit more, but they didn't. And then Emily, we know nothing about her. There's literally nothing to her, and I really wish they would have added more. The relation between these two as well is very forced because of this very abrupt time jump, which really didn't amount to much of anything in the end, and again, I really just wanted a lot more from them. I like these two together, but I'm hoping they give me more this season, because they really didn't do much of anything for me, unfortunately. However, if you had a problem with these first 3 episodes, like I did, quickly, that was all erased, because after the 3rd episode, most of these characters are no more, and that, of course, is due to the work of Venable and Mead, who somehow successfully end up poisoning all of them with these poison apples, and from there, basically all of them die except for Dinah, Coco, and Mallory. They are saved by the 3 witches from Coven. And at first, I really liked this idea. I was like, okay, let's see where they can go with this. I didn't really know how this was going to go. But at the same time, I was like, why did you have to kill off all of these characters? Why did we spend so much time building up Mr. Gallant if you were just going to kill him off? Why did we spend so much time building up, Timmy and Emily if they're gone? Because now that all these characters are gone, they really don't serve much of a purpose. And these first 3 episodes in general don't serve much of a purpose to me other than the fact to show that Michael is constantly on top of things and everything is going his way. That really is the only thing that this half of the season really does show, and I think they could have done a lot more. I honestly don't think we need to see as much of these first 3 episodes as we really did, because like I said, in general, they just didn't really amount to much of anything. It was a lot of back and forth between, oh, these are the rules, which admittedly the rules weren't even all that bad. Like, what were the rules? Like, oh, you can't leave the outpost on any circumstances, and there's no unauthorized, sexual interactions between anyone. So the rules really weren't even that bad, and I think they could have done a much better job with setting this stuff up. And look, at the time, I was really enjoying these first 3 episodes, but looking back, they're virtually pointless. I don't see why they need to be in this season. And again, maybe this is something that they'll address more in the last 5 episodes this season, but other than the fact that Michael was very much on top of things and that Meade was following his orders, I don't see why this season, why these first 3 episodes really needed to happen, and it just didn't really work that much for me overall. Then, of course, we get to the last 2 episodes that we've had this season, which are rapidly different than these first 3. And that's really why I'm complaining so much about these first 3 episodes, because of how different it is here. I mean, once we get to episodes 4 and 5, this is basically Coven 2.0. Like, that's essentially what this ends up becoming. And I don't have a problem with that, because I really enjoy the characters from Coven a lot. We were promised this was going to be a Coven Murder House crossover, and I was all for them, focusing on the main story first. I was fine with them doing that, and I'm still okay with them doing that. The problem is that main story has not really served much of a purpose here, because the show completely changes where you think that the rest of this season is going to be, Cordelia, Madison, and Myrtle Snow, who both of them are somehow alive. We still don't, we find out why Madison is alive, but they still haven't addressed why Myrtle Snow is alive. We still don't know how exactly that happened. Basically, those 3 resurrect Dinah, Coco, and Mallory, and you're thinking that they're going to team up to possibly stop Michael. And then once we're away from the present, we then get a 2-episode, and I'm not joking, these last 2 episodes have been flashbacks. They both have been flashbacks as to what's happened in 2017, and we have yet to leave that timeline. I don't think we're going to leave that timeline for a while, and again, I wouldn't be complaining if that's where most of these last 2 episodes took place in. Episode 4 takes place completely in 2017, and same with episode 5. They're both in previous time, and I don't think it's a bad idea necessarily to do that. It just makes the first 3 episodes looking largely pointless, and I didn't really see the point of them. The big thing going on, of course, in these 2 episodes is, of course, we do get more into the backstory of Michael, who he really is, who I was very fascinated by. He was raised by this woman who was eerily similar to Meade. In fact, I'm pretty sure she was Meade. This Meade, however, was a devil worshiper. She very much believed in Satan. She thought that Satan would do everything for them. This explains Michael's obsession with Satan as well. And, I really loved getting more into that side of things, and especially once we get to Michael joining all of these warlocks, I thought that was also very fascinating. How he was more powerful than all of them, even more powerful than some of the Supremes, and when Cordelia gets factored into this, I thought was really great writing. And the writing on Cordelia has been extremely consistent. That's something I will say about this, is that they have not at all, flanderized any of the characters from Coven. I was worried that they weren't going to get back into their roles as well, but they really got right back into it. Sarah Paulson especially, the way she transforms from Venable to Cordelia in just a couple episodes is honestly incredible. I don't know how she's able to do it. She has this acting ability that is just unparalleled in the show. And again, I know a lot of people are sick of her, but you can see why Murphy adores her as much as she does, because she is a great actress, and I love seeing her back in the Cordelia role. Cordelia really does take over this entire series, though. After this, once we get to this 4th episode, she pretty much takes over the entire thing, and I have no problem with that, because I do think Cordelia is a pretty solid lead character. We get into the idea that Cordelia is trying to right the wrongs of what Fiona did wrong. She doesn't want to make those same mistakes. She is very hesitant with getting Michael on board, because Michael wants to be trained by the witches, and he wants to possibly join Miss Robichaux's academy. And again, Cordelia is very much on the fence with this, because on one hand, she wants to accept everyone, and she wants to, she can see that Michael is very adamant about joining, and that he does have this talent, and that he has this gift clearly, but at the same time, she doesn't want to make a mistake here, and you can see that she's very conflicted, and I think they did a very good job with showing that. But I especially loved her in the 5th episode of the show, because at the end of the day, she is still devoted to these witches. They are her family, and that's something I really enjoyed. And I will say, the second that Zoe popped up in the 4th episode, I was actually really into it, and I definitely did get that feel that I wanted to, where it felt like you were back in a coven, and it got me right back into it, and I do think they did a very good job with doing that. That being said, there are a couple things here that I do think are a little fan servicey, especially with bringing back the characters of Madison and Misty. At first, not now, but at first, I thought it was a bit fan servicey, that, oh, people really love Madison, so we're just gonna bring her back. People really love Misty, so we're just gonna bring her back. And especially Madison, I like the Madison character, I do, but I will admit she was looking back, she was definitely one of the lower points of season 3, especially once she's resurrected. I think she kind of got annoying. So I wasn't the happiest to see her coming back. I know Emma Roberts hasn't really had a major role on the show since season 4, so it's cool to see her back as this character, but at first I really did not see the point of them bringing her back. Once we get to episode 5, then we actually realize what Cordelia's plan is. That's when it made more sense to me, because we eventually realized that Cordelia isn't just bringing them all back because we want to see them back. She's bringing them back because she wants to make sure that she has a strong enough army for when they are under attack, because these, the Coven of Warlocks are very much against women. They want women eradicated. They think that women are the main problem here. They don't think that women deserve to run, and they want to try to overthrow them as much as they can. And I really love this storyline, because we didn't really get to see this in Coven. We saw people who wanted to, get rid of the witches and things like that. We saw men that were witch hunters, but we didn't really get to see any warlocks. And I do like the way that this kind of expands that version of the story. And this is really when I feel like we're finally starting to get things moving here. It finally feels like we're getting a grasp on this story. It's taken like 5 episodes, but it really does feel like things are starting to come into place, and that's something that I am very excited to see where they do end up going within these next 5 episodes. And going back to the whole storyline with Michael, I really loved how Cordelia was able to trick him here. How she genuinely seemed like she was on board with training Michael, making it seem like, oh, she realized that, this was really her only option and she didn't want to disappoint him. But she realizes that, sure, he is very powerful, but he's too powerful. So powerful to the point where he's dangerous, and she kind of fears him, you can see. And she really is trying to prevent that future from happening, which, by the way, I'm really hoping that Cordelia having that vision doesn't just mean that the first 3 episodes of the show are completely in her head. I'm really hoping that's not what ends up happening, and that's especially concerning when we see Coco, Mallory, and, Coco, Mallory, and Dinah. All 3 of them did go to Miss Robichaux's academy, and I did like the way that we got to see that, especially with Mallory, who I think is for sure the strongest of those 3. The way that they kind of relegated her to a background character purposely, and eventually she came more into the forefront of things. That's something I'm very interested in seeing. I think they're setting up Mallory to be the person that's going to be able to take on Michael, because as we've seen, she has magic that none of them have ever seen before. None of them have ever been able to do before. She's done things that none of them have, like I said, have been able to ever do. So I'm very interested in seeing where Mallory does end up going as a character, and I think she could possibly be the one to take down Michael, and I think that's really kind of what they're setting up here, this Michael and Mallory conflict. I am definitely on board with that. I think this is a much better role for Billie Lourd because, let's face it, as much as I did like the Winter character, they never really knew what to do with her last season. She was always kind of doing different things, and her character was always kind of changing. I think this is a much better role for her. I really like what she's been doing as Mallory, and if that's what they're going to do with her moving forward, I'm very excited to see where they end up going with that. Now, I do want to get into some technical stuff here and there. Tonally wise, this season is a bit inconsistent with that, especially in the first 3 episodes. I think the last 2 have been a little bit more well-balanced in terms of that. But for the first 3, it was kind of hard to tell, were they taking themselves seriously or was it supposed to be more of a satire? It was very hard to tell there. A lot of the jokes didn't necessarily fall flat. Like, I did find a lot of them funny. There's a very funny scene in episode 2 where Coco, and I don't really like the Coco character, but this was definitely one of her better scenes where she's basically talking about, how different their generation is compared to Joan Collins' generation. I enjoyed that scene a lot. I thought that was definitely a lot of fun to watch. I really like the interplay there. But just overall, it's definitely not horror. Like, this is not in any way terrifying. There's not really anything that's scary going on. There have been some scenes here and there, but just overall, there hasn't really been anything that horrific in this season yet. So yeah, tonally, it's a little bit messy. The last 2 have been, I think, a little bit more focused, and that's mainly because Coven overall, the thing I love about Coven as a season is that, sure, there were moments where it took itself seriously, but it never took itself too seriously. It knew how to ride the line between these 2, and I think that's the same with these last 2 episodes. They've done a good job with that, and that's something I am definitely very happy about. In terms of the cinematography, this season is definitely not disappointing. In fact, I think it's been some of the best cinematography of the entire series. Just the look of Outpost 3 overall, the very Victorian look, it's a very specific choice, and I do think it does work very well. I like the way that everything does look. I like the feel of it. It does give you that very eerie type vibe, and I do think it does work very well. And then in contrast, the Coven look, I mean, that always does look great. I love the way that the House of Robichaux does look. I've always really enjoyed that. The effects are definitely really great, and I think the cinematography is still very good here. In terms of the score, it's still very good. And of course, the editing to this season. I think this season has been very well paced for the most part. I think it hasn't overstayed its welcome. I will say episode 1, I think, could have been a lot longer. I think they really could have done a better job with fleshing out the characters a little bit more before placing them in Outpost 3. But other than that, I think the season has been pretty well paced for the most part, and considering how either sluggish or too fast-paced American Horror Story tends to be, that's definitely a positive for this season for sure. Like I said, though, the thing that does remain, the main problem that I do have with these first 5 episodes are the people we focused on in the first 2. We didn't focus on Mallory, Coco, and Dinah. If we had focused on them, that wouldn't have been an issue, because those 3 have become the most important characters from that side of the story. That being said, though, those aren't the characters we really focused on. We mainly focused on Venable, Mead, Timothy and Emily, and Mr. Gallant. Those are mainly the people we focused on, and none of those people are even involved in this story anymore. And again, maybe they'll bring them back in episodes 9 and 10, considering that in Coven, we know that the major theme is that everyone does end up coming back and no one ever truly stays dead. But don't you think that if Cordelia and Madison and Myrtle, if they actually needed them, don't you think they would have already brought them back? So that's why I'm very skeptical with, are they actually going to come back? I'm hearing people say that they are going to bring them back in the next 2 episodes, but I just don't see that happening. I don't think that really is a possibility, unfortunately. So it sucks because, again, I think those characters could have been a lot better. And the Mead character, you know, she's still out there. I'm interested in seeing what they do with the Mead character, especially now that she's murdered Cheyenne Jackson's character. I don't really know where that's going to go. I'm sure he's going to come back because he's billed as the main character, so I'm sure he will be coming back somehow this season. There's virtually nothing to him at this point. He's another devil worshiper, and you know, he's very much on the side of let's eradicate all women, but that's really it. We don't know really too much else about him, but I am interested in seeing where he's really going to go as a character. But the main thing I am obviously very interested in is the inclusion of Murder House. I am so excited to see where they are going with that, you know, next week. The way that episode 5 ends with her saying that we have to go back and you see that shot of Murder House, yes, that is what I want to see. That is exactly where we need to be going. And maybe that will actually explain a lot of the things that were going on in the first 3 episodes. A lot of people suspected that Outpost 3 was going to be under Murder House, and clearly that's not the case since we realized that Outpost 3 was actually where, you know, Michael and his, you know, his coven did reside. You know, they live in that building, so we still don't really know what causes the end of the world. And again, I'm worried that this is all going to end up being in Cordelia's head, and I'm hoping they don't end up going there. I like where the story is going. I don't want to act like I'm not, because I really do like where the story is going. I like this idea that Cordelia now has everyone back together and everything is going great for her, and she's ready to face up against Michael, but first she's got to go back to Murder House and, you know, gain some information on him. I'm excited to see, if anything, I'm just excited to see, like, Connie Britton again, who hasn't been in the show since season 1. That's going to be really cool to see. Seeing, you know, Vivian Harmon and all the Harmons and Tates, and seeing Constance. I mean, guys, we're seeing Jessica Lange next week. Just think about that. Jessica Lange is coming back. Sure, it's for 1 episode, but she is coming back next week, which is just incredible. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. There are still a lot of questions I have. How Myrtle is still alive. I mean, I guess you could just say that, oh, Cordelia is able to bring back whoever she wants, but, like, I need a bigger explanation than that. I'm sorry. Myrtle being back, you know, just abruptly like that just didn't really work for me as it did, maybe as much as it did for other people. I want to see more with Timmy and Emily. Why were these two the chosen one? Does that have anything to do with what's going on? And of course, the whole thing with Michael interviewing people, I mean, that didn't really go much of anywhere. I know I didn't really touch upon that, but again, it just really, again, just shows how pointless the first 3 episodes were, because they haven't really led to much of anything. I'm sure we'll get more stuff with Mead and Michael, but other than that, the other characters really did not need to be there, and, you know, other than that, I am interested in seeing where the rest of the season is going to go. I think that it is setting itself to be a really great last half of the season, and I do hope it does pay off. I'm just a little worried that a lot of these things that were set up in the first, like, 3 episodes just aren't going to really lead to anything, and we'll have to see what really does end up happening there. But that's really it for my thoughts on American Horror Story Apocalypse so far. I'm not going to grade each individual episode, because this wasn't really a review of each episode on its own. It was mainly just an overview of the season overall, what I liked, what I didn't like, all that stuff. Moving forward, however, I am going to review every single episode. Once episode 6, you know, comes out next week, I will be giving a review of that, so definitely look forward to that. But either way, guys, that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys thought of this season so far. Love to hear your thoughts on it. What do you like? What don't you like? If there's anything I forgot, which there very likely could be, there are definitely some things that I probably did leave out. Just let me know what you guys thought of that. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.